Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Progression to Analog. Today we're here with Bella Dane. Hi, Bella.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So happy to have you here.
So excited to be here.
So why don't you introduce yourself for our audience?
I'm Bella. I have a podcast called How to Stop Being a Loser. You should follow it. It's fabulous. I cover topics around neuroscience, psychology, self-improvement, confidence. I try to be funny. That's what I do.
The whole thing.
The whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how did you get into this learning lifestyle? So I feel like most people, when they're influencers, they're into beauty content or clothes, and you do that, but you also talk about learning. And I like that combination and showing everyone that you don't have to just do one thing. So how did you get into that niche or area of learning?
It's funny, I don't think there's a solid answer because I've lived so many lives. If I were to go through every job I've had or every interest, every hobby I've had with you, we'd be here all day. So I think it was just sort of part of it was I hated school.
Yeah.
And I never did well in school.
Yeah.
I mean, I was there 80% of the time.
Yeah.
So I had kind of a unique relationship with education
Yeah.
where I wasn't interested in learning in a traditional classroom sense, but my father was getting me up at 5:30 every morning and was like just pounding educational content into my brain.
Cool.
Whether it was theology or archaeology, it's just tons and tons of information.
Yeah.
So I was always a curious person because ever since I was young, that had been instilled in me to be someone who was interested in learning. And as a hobby in your spare time, you're learning things. So it's sort of this weird complex that emerged. And then I didn't think I was going to go to college at all. Just wasn't. I always thought I would be an entrepreneur. I didn't think I needed to go to college. Best decision I ever made was going to college. And I would say even then I didn't really appreciate the privilege that is having access to an education. And I regret that. I feel it's something that we don't, gets taken for granted so much, is the ability to have access to public school and just even just access to information online.
Yeah.
And so I really wish that I would have taken that seriously and put more effort into school. But now it's become this natural just passion of mine, and I've integrated into my life so much because I really believe in taking care of the brain, and I believe in educating people, especially women.
Yeah, especially because in our everyday lives, there's so much content that we're consuming, and to think about how can we either create or how can we learn is such an important mindset shift, I think, to have.
Yeah, 100%.
So what is the first thing that you would recommend to someone if they want to have more of a learning lifestyle?
There's so many little things, like little habits I could tell you to do and clever ways to integrate it. But the biggest thing is truly just being curious of the world around you. It's such a lost art. I just listened to this really interesting podcast with Andrew Huberman and I can't remember his name, but they were talking about the science of emotion and cultivating awe. A-W-E, cultivating awe. And I made a TikTok about this where I was like, people aren't amazed by things anymore. We don't have awe for things anymore. And there are all these studies that he performed on elderly patients that have some cognitive decline issues. The prescription was nature and an awe walk. You go out and you walk and you intentionally are amazed by things. And you start with a leaf on a tree, and then you realize that
That's
it's
so nice.
and you do all those things. I think it's so healthy for you, and you really do learn so much by just being intentionally curious. And I think I learned that from my dad, and anytime we were at a restaurant, he was like, how did they make that light fixture? And how did they make this menu? And like, what's this made out of? Or what's this fixture over here made out of? Or anytime you hear a word, don't just go, oh, I don't know what that means. Or, oh, that's crazy. Or a topic that you know nothing about, write it down, look it up. Just being intentionally curious of the world around you. When you treat curiosity like a religion, it just becomes the way that you view the world.
Definitely.
As a curious person.
That's so true. There's a girl from my high school who wrote a book on something called social prescribing. And it's this idea that instead of prescribing only medicines to people, that you can also prescribe things like nature or walks, and there's a lot of science behind it.
Maybe that's what I'm talking about,
yeah,
that sounds really similar.
I think that idea is so important because the way that the education system works, obviously education is very important, but a lot of times we're taught that there's a right or wrong way to learn things. I know as someone who's neurodivergent, I have ADHD, a lot of times it was like, you're supposed to learn it this way, but I would be doing it a totally different way. And so sometimes it makes people fall out of love with learning because they feel like it has to be this certain way to learn.
Yeah, it's not always a binary thing.
Yeah, but the curiosity thing is so important, especially when there's just so many things around us that we could be asking questions about.
Yeah, absolutely.
So one of the things I read in your recent Substack was you say that it's a good idea to have a theme for the year.
Yeah.
So talk about that.
I mean, I've been studying neuroscience for a year now, and I think people maybe are surprised by that, but it's like, I think a lot of people get overwhelmed with the concept of a personal curriculum, and I love this personal curriculum trend, but I think so often it's like, well, today I'm going to learn this, and next week I'm going to learn this, and the brain does so much better with consistency. So just pick a topic and learn it, you know, for a year, and it doesn't look like, it doesn't always have to be this rigid thing. But maybe instead of listening to music in the car, you're listening to, if you pick psychology as a topic, you're listening to a psychology podcast. Or if you're reading a book about psychology. So, it all, you know, it all can kind of tie together. I don't think it always has to be this strict, rigid thing. But you just become so much more proficient at things if you commit to them long term. Instead of bouncing around different topics. Like, so many people, I want to learn a new language, and I want to learn this, and I want to learn this, and I want to learn this. Well, but if you picked one thing and you did that for a year, after 4 years, that's serious proficiency in 4 different topics. And they all end up, you know, being appendages of each other anyway. But
that's what I mean.
More effective.
I have an undergrad degree in sociology, but there were so many things that I wanted to keep learning about it, but I didn't want to go get a PhD, and so that's what I've been doing, is just studying sociology, modern communication, all that stuff. And there's so many ways that you can go into different rabbit holes and figure out what works best for you, and then that makes learning fun because it's not just what you have to be doing, it's what is interesting to you.
Yeah, it just becomes more natural because you remember things much better if you have an emotional tie to them anyway.
Yeah,
so when it becomes this forced thing, you know, I think it doesn't stick as well anyway.
No. So what drew you to neuroscience specifically, and what are some of the most interesting things that you think people would be fascinated to hear?
Yeah, I feel like I get asked that a lot. I think I really appreciate the brain's ability to hold us all accountable. I like that the brain is such a high bullshit detector. I just find it fascinating. And I also think I was a child actor, and so lots of acting, lots of theater.
Cool.
And I liked the identity work that you have to do when you're creating a character, and you realize how much of that, how much of self-identity and sense of self is created. You know, your personality is not real. And your brain is this very manipulatable, malleable thing, which we've learned with the discovery of neuroplasticity, which is relatively recent. So I think I like that. I like that people aren't stuck with, you know, you're not stuck. Your personality is not a fixed thing. So I think that's what drew me to neuroscience, is I just appreciate the mechanisms of the brain, I guess.
Definitely. And for the learning lifestyle that you feel like you've cultivated, is that something that you share with your friends and maybe your significant other, or is it more of something that's for you?
That's all me.
Yeah.
It really is. I don't know. I don't find it to be something that I need to be a social
I feel the same
thing.
way. Yeah.
I just, it's personal, and I think maybe my friends are inspired by it, and maybe they adopt some of those principles, but no, I wouldn't say that it has to do with anyone else, which is kind of funny. I've never been asked that before.
Yeah, I think, because I think that sometimes people think that changes in their life should always be social or a part of a group, and it's a little bit easier that way. So it's like if a group of friends all stops drinking or stops using their phone or whatever, it's a little bit maybe easier to do that. But I think that some of these habits and learnings can be something that you have individually. I mean, some of my friends, if I bring up, I have certain friends who we share the same hyperfixations and we can go into little rabbit holes, but other friends where we don't. And I think it's important as you're cultivating this learning lifestyle to realize you don't have to have the same hyperfixations as everyone that you know.
I agree. There's a lot of science behind you are who you surround yourself with, and I believe that to a certain extent. But I also think you shouldn't pick your friends based off of maybe more superficial things.
No, I agree. And actually, one of my close friends, Alex, we met in a very weird way. We originally matched on a dating app, and then we didn't go out. Actually, I blocked him on Snapchat because he was it was 2017 or 18, and he said I was using geo filters too much, but I was using them whatever. I just didn't get
What is a geo filter?
You know, when on Snapchat, when you used to be able to put the location, and it was like a cute little thing. They did it for a few years, whatever. He was just annoying me. I was on vacation. I was like, block. So Be Real becomes a thing in 2020.
Oh, I forgot about Be Real.
Be Real.
That is so funny.
And he adds me, and I'm like, I'm in a relationship. I'm now married to the person who I was in a relationship with. But I look up this guy, Alex, online, and he has this really cool company. And as a founder in New York, sometimes it feels a little bit lonely because you're in this city with so many people. But I charted a different path for my business because I didn't want to do venture funding. I always wanted to be self-sustaining with just, profitable from the inception and that. So I looked him up and saw that it was interesting. I said to my husband, I'm thinking about, becoming friends with the guy who's like, go. I met him and we ended up having all these really interesting interests, spoke at a conference in Berlin together. He's introduced me to some of these books and learning. So in some ways, it's nice because my larger group of friends, no, we don't have this in common with some of the hyperfixations, but I'll see him and he'll be like, oh, this niche book or this thing, and just always kind of knows what is going on. And that's kind of fun. And now we have a Snapchat group with him, my other friend, and two of my cousins who are in college, and they all came to my wedding, and it was like the most random thing. My friends were like, this is so random.
I love
Be Real
stuff
friend
like
group.
that, though. I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
It's funny how those relationships sometimes come in unexpectedly.
Right? It really is.
Yeah. But it's not, it must be nice for you having someone in the industry.
Yeah, exactly.
Or in a similar niche.
Exactly. So what are your thoughts on brain rot and how to unbrain rot?
I mean, it's not like a medical term. It was Oxford's Word of the Year in 2024. And although, again, it's not a medical term, it does have legitimate, scientifically proven awful side effects. There was a really interesting study done that reviewed all of this research for 2023 and 2024. It's on National Institute of Health. You can look it up. But it talked about the negative side effects of brain rot, which I would define as cognitive decline and emotional desensitization to things because of overconsumption of low-quality digital media. And it's funny because I did an entire podcast about brain rot, and in the podcast I said, I say things like scrolling is bad, doom scrolling is bad, it's killing your attention span, and everyone goes, well, yeah, duh. That is actually brain rot.
Yeah.
That's emotional desensitization.
Yeah.
Me saying to you,
Ooh,
this thing that you're engaging in all day, every day, for hours of your time is making you emotionally unstable. It's killing your focus. It's killing your attention span. It's slowing your cognitive processing speed. It's damaging your memory, both long and short-term memory. And you go, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
That is emotional desensitization. You're experiencing it right there. It's just this hilarious irony. But you realize that you are so desensitized to things. Well, okay, so I read this book called Stolen Focus, which is a great book. Anyone should read it. This was what really got me interested and driven about brain rot. Fascinating book. But in the book, they talk about how they created Facebook's algorithms, and they wanted to figure out how to get people to stay on the app longer. And they found that the strongest, most addictive human emotion, or the emotion that would get you to continue engaging with something, the strongest is rage. So that's why when you watch negative news or you watch enraging content and you have an emotional reaction to it, it becomes this very attractive thing that you want to keep engaging in, and that's how they create these algorithms. And so things like that, your brain is not physically rotting, but it affects so many different parts of the brain negatively, and it's a serious epidemic. It's really sad.
And then you start to crave the rage, and then it becomes this pattern of things. And I think also it makes people, because I think that detachment is a great thing in some areas. Like, you shouldn't obsess over relationships that aren't serving you or things like that. But I think sometimes people become overly detached because there's so much emotional input that they have from content that they're just detached from things completely in a way where it's like, how can we find that balance of things? And I find that in relationships or in just the workplace, there's all these inputs, and it's like, what is this doing to us? But at the same time, we're people who post things online. It's a part for you. It's like a big part of your work too. So how do you balance that of like, the type of content that you're consuming also in your everyday life? Do you have guardrails or ways that you balance how much you're scrolling, or how do you keep that balance?
I made a video saying I don't scroll very much.
Yeah.
And I had like 1,000 people that said, this is so funny as an influencer saying you don't scroll. And I was like, why?
Yeah.
Why? I can make videos and not consume anything.
Yeah. That's true.
And it's funny to me, that was just such a assumption to people, but I don't see why the two need to coexist at all.
Definitely.
I think it's better as a content creator to make content that you like and keep your head down and do what works well for you, because otherwise I find that a lot of content creators, you just copy content that you see, or you save a bunch of videos for inspo, but then it ends up not being you, and it ends up not being as authentic as it could be if you would just experiment on your own and do what works best for you. So in terms of parameters, I just limit it. There's not really like a strict thing that I have. I mean, I don't doom scroll very much. I scroll TikTok sometimes, but I'm pretty intentional with the content that I consume, and I make sure that a majority of it is things that are intellectually stimulating me to some degree. But it's not like I won't watch a movie or I won't scroll every now and then. I think that's just too rigid and unrealistic.
Yeah, I'm the same. Do you have those things like the brick or anything for phone habits?
No, but I think that's great.
Yeah.
I do think that's great.
What is your morning routine like with the smartphone and also just in general?
I don't get on my phone in the morning.
Me neither.
At all. And I started, my mood is I really have to work at regulating my mood, which is frustrating.
Don't we all?
I'm just crazy. I really have to work at that. And so something that I found is so helpful is, yes, not getting on my phone, but getting morning sunlight in the morning, getting vitamin D production, regulating my circadian rhythm, all those things, diversifying your gut microbiome, which can be great for your mood, walking in the morning, and then eating. Like, women have to eat in the morning. Men do much better in a fasted state than women do.
I know my husband, I'm like, what do you mean? I like to eat more in the morning.
Yeah, so that's probably the most important thing. Just not getting on my phone and eating and hydrating. I feel like people don't go back to the basic things. Sometimes it's not a product that you need to buy or like another thing that you need to integrate. Sometimes it's just basic: eat, drink water, don't get on your phone, walk around.
Exactly.
That will do a lot.
Not the create the problem, solve the solution. Sometimes it's literally just going outside. And I think, to your point, we were talking earlier off camera about how life is in New York City, and I do think that's one of the harder things about it, is that the intentionality it takes to get morning sunlight, especially, woe is me, but with my terrace under construction. I used to love just like waking up really early
and sit out there.
Just sitting out there, and now it's,
Plus it gets cold.
Very intentional about it.
Yeah, it does get hard.
Yeah. In Swedish, they have a word that says that there is no bad weather, just bad clothing. So it's like you can go outside in any time. And
I disagree with
whatever,
that.
But
Sweden.
Yeah, it's hard.
That is so wrong.
Yeah, it's so that takes a lot of, I would say, grit to just be able to go outside when it's really cold. But
it does. Like people that run when it's snowing, I mean, that's a different level of discipline.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
Now I want to talk breakups in the digital age. Okay, one of my favorite topics is something called hypercommunication. So it's excess inbound or outbound communication with technology. Just the speed with which we communicate and how that affects relationships. This is something that I'm currently writing a book on. It's something I've been studying so much, and I think it's just so interesting how much this acceleration of communication can be really fun, right?
Yeah.
So at its best, it's like when the group chat's lighting up and everyone's just responding at the same time. But at its worst, it makes us respond in ways where maybe we're not thinking about everything, or we're not really fully digesting things and letting them sit. So in your personal life first, what are some things that you do to make sure that this, these overwhelming communication from digital communication doesn't get to you?
Doesn't get to me?
Yeah.
I don't prioritize it, I would say. I really believe in in-person communication. I believe in catching up. I think it's odd. Having a group chat is not having friends.
Totally.
And someone laughing at your text is not someone, and it's not sharing a laugh and having the empathic resonance that happens.
Yeah.
There's things that happen when you're with someone. Your brain waves literally sync up. We have something called interpersonal neural synchrony.
Yeah.
And there's this really amazing physiological thing that happens when we interact with other people. And when you don't have that and you're just doing it through a phone, I think that can be damaging. So I prioritize catching up. I always have plans with my friends. My friends and I are really, really good about that. And if I have something that I want to talk to them about, I don't immediately text or call them. I wait to see them in person.
That's a key one.
Yeah.
That's a key one, because it's the worst when you have some really interesting piece of information and then you text it and then you lose that, and then when you see them, they already know it.
Yeah.
And so it's fun to share that. I think that was actually the tip that I said on stage when I spoke at Brain Bar, this festival in Hungary. And I think it's so important for people to know. It can be such a small thing, especially if you're in high school or college, but maybe just to save that for when you actually see your friends. It makes a huge difference, because then when you see your friends in person, if you've already texted everything, then you just end up going on your phone because then you're bored and there's nothing to talk about.
Yeah, exactly. And my boyfriend and I do that. We don't really text.
Yeah.
We go on dates.
Yeah, I'm the same with my husband. And also it's funny, I feel like sometimes on bachelorettes, I'm about to go on too, but ones that I've been on in the past and just from hearing from friends, sometimes you go on, you're supposed to be spending time with these girls, and then the whole time people are just FaceTiming their significant other or calling them or whatever. And I find that to be interesting, because I think that there's this issue sometimes now with technology with having distance from people.
I agree.
But I think that that's one of the most important things to cultivate.
Absolutely agree. You have to miss people. You have to let people miss you.
Yeah.
I think that's really important. Absolutely agree.
Yeah, because there's this idea of eros and the other, and I think sometimes when we're just spending 24/7 with someone and knowing every single thing about their life, it can just feel so much.
Agree.
And we're not having that
absolutely agree
separation.
Yeah, I think it's important for sure.
So, but how can people maybe cultivate some detachment in a world where we are always attached? What are some things that you've...
Put your phone on Do Not Disturb during the day. My phone is on Do Not Disturb all day.
Me too.
I don't reply to people during the day.
Me too.
I think that's good. I think always have plans.
Yeah.
Always have plans in person. And I think just stop prioritizing that form of communication. There's other ways to communicate. And I don't think it always needs to be via text. Just call. Yeah. Just call instead of texting, I think, makes a huge difference. FaceTiming.
Definitely.
You know, because not everyone lives in the same city, and some people have long-distance relationships, so they can't catch up in person.
Yeah.
But save it for a FaceTime.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Because we can have parasocial relationships with our friends, and sometimes people forget this, is that we can make judgments about our friends' lives and just think that we're caught up just based on their stories and things like that. And sometimes it's like, oh, I haven't caught up with that person in like several months. So calling them, I think, makes a big difference. What has been your key in finding that consistency and finding your passion? Because a lot of times I'll get questions from people saying, okay, consistency, great, but how do I find what I want to be consistent at?
Like in career?
Yeah, in your career, or just like the learning curriculum, anything like that.
It's so different. I mean, there's so many things that you can do. The thing about consistency is it's not about having more discipline. It's about having systems and processes in place that are designed to make you succeed no matter what. Because motivation and discipline are very inconsistent things inherently, especially for women. We're 4 different people every month. So not relying on something like that is really important. And we also experience something called decision fatigue, which is when you make too many decisions throughout the day, and you're tired or you're hungry or you're dehydrated, the brain only has so much cognitive energy reserved throughout the day. And so by 5 p.m., if you've been making decisions since 5 a.m., you will burn out. The prefrontal cortex, which is your logical decision-making, CEO part of the brain, in some ways kind of goes offline. And so you're not making logical decisions anymore. You're relying on habits. You're relying on systems and processes. So if you can have those set up and ready to go, so that you don't have to think, you don't have to make decisions, you will be successful no matter what. Like I'm a coach, so I coach women, and it's a personal branding, self-identity, and confidence communication course. And we talk a lot about habits, and I'll have them give me things that they're dealing with or things that they want to improve. And the solution is always, how can we make a better system? So if it's something as simple as I don't drink enough water, okay, well, how many water bottles do you have? Do you have timers set on your phone? Drink water. Do you have full water? Are you getting up in the morning and filling up 4 water bottles and placing them all around your house? Are you setting them in front of your desk? Are you saying, I can't have coffee until I drink this much thing of this full thing of water? And something as simple as that. So is that discipline, or is that just having a system in place? Layla Hormozi explained this extremely well. She said, I forget to eat a lot. And so I have it set on my phone, order food. And then she has a timer going where she prioritizes, eating or things like that. Steve Jobs, you'll see he only wears black turtlenecks. A lot of successful people, they only wear like 3 things. I only really wear black, white, or gold because that's my thing.
Love that.
It's part of my personal brand, but it also reduces those little decisions, so I'm not wasting cognitive reserves on things that don't matter. So I can keep going, and it makes you more productive. So I think that's the key to being consistent, is you need to set up systems, and you have to do sometimes really weird things.
And reducing the amount of decisions that you have to make when you first wake up to what that first task might be. So what are some of the systems you have in your everyday life, besides having the objects in front of you? Because I think that's a very important one, is that if you don't have something like a water bottle or just even a working laptop or anything, it can just send you into spirals of weeks of just trying to figure something out, whereas if you had that object, it would make your life a lot easier.
I mean, I'm my own boss. I've been my own boss for a long time, and time management is something that I'm not naturally good at, but if you want to be a successful boss to yourself, you have to figure it out. Because there is no one telling you anything. You don't even have a job description. So you're just waking up every day and throwing a shot in the dark and hoping that it works. So I've learned that I'm a content creator, so I need to have it set up to where I have a desk, a filming setup. I have the lights ready to go. So all I have to do is get ready, sit down, and boom, done. It's not like I have to go find this piece of equipment, find this. It's all ready to go for me. So that's a good one. I use timers a lot.
Interesting.
A lot. So, and my phone is on Do Not Disturb a lot.
That's important.
So if I decide, I found what has made me the most productive is I'm extremely good at focusing on one thing at a time. So it's not this rigid
hyper focus on kind of one thing.
Yeah, it's not this rigid hyper productivity thing where I'm balancing all these different things. But if you're working out, you're working out. If you're with your boyfriend, you're with your boyfriend.
That's
if you're working,
today.
you're working. If you're with your friends, it's about being 100% present in everything that you do. Also, one of my favorite journals of all time, or papers of all time, is A Wandering Mind is an Unhappy Mind. And there's a caveat to this, which I talk a lot about the default mode network and how important daydreaming is. But that's different from if you're in a conversation with someone, if you're focused on something that's not the conversation you're having, it leads to pretty significant levels of unhappiness and also a complete lack of productivity. If you can give 100% to whatever you're doing now, that will follow it. That heuristic will follow into every other aspect of your life.
Because whether it's a conversation or productivity, you start here and you're wanting to get deeper and deeper and deeper. And sometimes if you're picking up your phone and looking at a notification, it just takes you back to the surface.
Right.
And then it also reduces that connectivity you might have with the friend because they're saying that they're listening, but they're actually on their phone. The same with focus. It makes it a little bit more difficult because you have all these things that you want to do, but then the notifications provide distractions.
Absolutely.
So how are you structuring your week? Because that's something that I did a video on recently around how to get into flow state, and people are interested in, okay, how can this work? So for me, what I do is Monday and Friday I have more unstructured days where I can do content creation, or I can do deep work on different free-flowing projects, writing, stuff like that. And Tuesday through Thursday I have a lot of my client meetings, like back to back to back to back.
That's
so
good.
that way I have, that's in an ideal
structure.
week. Obviously it doesn't always pan out that way, but at least, and then I always get up with enough time to have some of that like free flow. I've read every morning for 3.5 years before going on my phone. So that's how it works for me. But I'm curious for someone else who also works for themselves, is it similar to that? How do you structure? Is it like you do content for a certain amount of time each day? Do you go with how your body feels?
Yeah, it's so tough because you can't plan when you're going to have an idea. That's the tough thing about being a creative professional. I also find that I work much more productively and I'm much more creative at night, which is common for women. And there's nothing wrong with that. You can have a balanced circadian rhythm and sleep schedule and not, go to bed early and wake up early.
I didn't know that was more common for women. That's interesting because I kind of feel that sometimes.
Yeah, that's just not how I roll. Like, I think a lot of people associate productivity with getting up early and going to bed early, and that's just not true. You can sleep just as optimally and be a night owl. There's nothing wrong with that. But anyway, I'm probably getting off topic. I structure my days and I have a set template, but I'm very comfortable with that changing, is I guess what I would say. So Mondays I bulk film TikToks because I get really into my work and I can focus for long periods of time to the point where I forget to eat, I forget to sleep. Like I could work on something for 12 hours. That's just how I am. And I used to be ADHD. I was told I was ADHD. Whatever. I don't know. I've really trained myself to be someone who is just very, very good at like laser focus. And so I sit down and I'll start filming and I'll film for like 8 hours sometimes, like just back to back to back to back to back, stuff like that. I'm always filming a vlog for YouTube, so that's going all the time. The camera's always going for that. Tuesday, I'll record my podcast. Wednesday, I have different priorities that I do. So, like, Thursdays is writing for Substack. One day is for filming brand deals. One day is for working on the business. And then I coach Monday nights. I work on the coaching business Wednesday. So, different things that I need to get done. But I find that what is the most helpful is more just having a set list of priorities. So it's like, what are 3 things that you have to get done every day so that you can put your head on the pillow and feel accomplished?
Definitely.
Is it working out, filming, and working on the podcast?
Yeah,
then
the 3
that's
things
fine.
is great.
Yeah.
I always use the test too, if you're someone who's thinking about starting your own business, of the Saturday morning test of like, on a free Saturday morning, would you want to work on this project?
Yeah, I like that question.
That's, I think, a really important thing because I started my business when I was working at LinkedIn after graduation, and I was on the West Coast, and I would be getting up like early, working from say 5:30 to 8:30 Pacific time, so it was on the East Coast, 8:30 to 11:30, and then doing a full day of work, and it was something that I really had to love. And I think that for a lot of people, you don't just go straight from a full-time job to working for yourself. There has to be this transition period.
Yeah, that was rough for me.
Yeah. So what was that like for you?
I worked at a architecture firm. Well, first I was bartending. I bartended for like 4 years.
Cool.
But I was bartending. I got hired by this COO at an architecture firm in Dallas. She liked me, and so I went to work for her. And I worked there from 8:30 to about 6:30, and then I would go home, and I would film from 7:30 until like 1 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
And I did that for 8 months. I was so weak and drained from working that much because I was not eating. I wasn't sleeping. My mood was completely dysregulated. My hormones were completely dysregulated. I wasn't sleeping. I literally went to a psychiatrist and I was like, what's wrong with me?
Yeah.
And he was like, you might have bipolar 3. I'm going,
I didn't know there was a 3.
Damn, really?
I thought it was 1 and 2.
Then I told him everything going on in my life and he goes, okay, no, you just need to like take care of yourself.
Yeah.
You're not a robot.
Yeah.
But I did it for 8 months and I don't regret it at all because I knew that if I could get through 8 months that I would be able to be self-employed at the end of it. So I'm glad that I did that. I was like, I'm just going to kick ass for 8 months. And it was tough though, you know. It was worth it. It was worth it.
And that point that you make about us not being robots, sometimes we have to remember that. We might have things going on in our relationships or our families. And sometimes I think also social media, sometimes people just don't talk about what's going wrong. And so we think when we're consuming content or when we're out with our friends that other people aren't going through things. And that's why it's important to have like vulnerable conversations with people to understand what's going on with your friends or what's going on and what you want to share.
I agree. I think it's important to not make assumptions either.
Definitely.
For agreements, don't make assumptions.
You never know what people are going through.
Yeah, you don't. I think it's important that that's taught. It's funny, there's so many things where I'm like, why don't we teach that in schools?
And it's like some of the things that are taught. Like,
yeah, it's so strange. Selena Gomez actually said this.
Really?
I actually really love her for her mental health discussion.
She's great.
But she was like, it's funny how when you're in kindergarten, you walk in and it's like, how are you feeling today? And you say like red, I'm feeling bad, or yellow, I'm feeling okay, or green, I'm feeling really good. And then we just kind of stop doing that as if we don't get 10 times more emotionally complex as we get older. Emotional intelligence isn't taught. Learning to regulate your emotions is not taught.
No.
Layla Hormozi also said this. The number one reason why businesses fail is because of someone's ability to not regulate their emotions.
Interesting.
That's why they fail, because you can't make logical decisions. And if you're relying on your emotions and that's what you're following, then you're going to make rash decisions and you're going to do things out of fear and not out of what's really the most successful, healthy decision here. And it just blows my mind that that's not taught.
Totally. And you'd also be surprised at how understanding people can be. I had 2 concussions last year, and now I'm in like my first full month back to work, and
that's crazy.
It was
what did you do?
I have POTS syndrome. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
I've
like
heard of it.
Low blood pressure, really low blood pressure and stuff. So I hit my head on a wall trying on my rehearsal dinner dress for my wedding, just like randomly, and got a concussion. And I was a D1 athlete. Like I don't know how that happened.
That's terrible.
And then I was staying in a historic house before my wedding and didn't even drink at my welcome party, but there was a slanted ceiling and I like hit it there. So my job is a lot of like public speaking, stuff like that. And when I was getting back into it, and sometimes podcast guests, I'd say to them, hey, I have to have this notebook or whatever. And people are just actually so much nicer than you really would think. Yeah. And even I did a TEDx talk at Princeton, and I explained to the students what was happening, and people just were a lot more understanding and saying that they've gone through certain things and being, because I was so used to being like on, and people just will work with you. Yeah,
I agree.
If you're just honest about it. But I think it's striking that balance of sharing what's going on with you without oversharing, but trying to find that balance, I think, is a hard thing to do in the digital age, but it's something that people are all human, and that's,
I agree.
Yeah. And that's, I think, what's nice about your content, is that it's sharing ways that people can make their lives better instead of this doom and like negativity that so many, like, I love a good like negative video or critique. But sometimes all the cultural criticisms, like I'm getting so sick of them, because I'm like, okay, what are some ways that like habits can build? And the book Atomic Habits sometimes gets a lot of like flack because people are like, oh, it's so basic, or that's stupid,
I don't
or
think it's
whatever.
Basic at all.
But I think it's great, and I think that I read that a while ago.
People that are saying that probably haven't read it, or listened to anything by James Clear, because.
And you can like lots of different things. I think also the internet makes you think like, oh, I have to be this hyper intellectual person that only likes these really niche topics, or I have to like this, or I have to like this. And the reality of life is that that's just not how it works.
It's much more fluid.
Yeah, it's much more fluid. But I think also to be able to have that confidence in yourself and do these things, part of it is setting up systems in your everyday so that you can get to that place where you can be creative. Because I think so many people are just struggling to get through maybe just the first few hours of their day because they can't find something, or they are overwhelmed from work and they don't know how to carve out those extra few hours to be creative or to find that learning in their everyday life.
I don't think you need to. You already have habits. It's just about changing them to align more with that in mind in terms of like priority. So you already, you drive or you're in the car. So instead of listening to what you listen to, you could listen to something, a podcast or a YouTube video, or you could read. So I don't think it's about, carving out extra time as much as just improving the systems that you already have.
That's a good point. So I think that kind of relates to what you were saying about your life, because you said that growing up, your dad would always make you creative and stuff like that. But have you always been the type of person that was listening to podcasts or learning all the time in college? And
I've
how
always,
did you amplify it?
Yeah, I've always been this person, but that doesn't mean that. I always say, if you ask anyone who is really, really disciplined, entrepreneurial, or has those traits, you ask them, what makes you like that? Every single person says the same thing. Oh, it's just who I am. That's just who I am. But it's something that's taught, and it's a skill. So
that's true.
The difference is you need to make it something that you are, not something that you're doing.
Yeah.
It's not something that you do. It's something that you are. Like, you are someone who prioritizes your intellectual curiosity. It's not like, oh, I'm someone who reads every day. No, just be someone who prioritizes their intellectual curiosity in the decisions that they make.
Yeah.
And it works. That is actually what works with the brain instead of against it. So sometimes it's not about these goals that you're setting. Goals are wonderful. But sometimes it's more about, instead of just having these goals, change your identity associated with the goal, because your brain is then going to filter out things that don't align with that. Your brain doesn't change based off of what you want. It changes on who you believe you are, not your goals.
That's a great point.
So instead of saying, I'm going to run every single morning, I'm going to run a mile every single morning, why don't you say, I'm someone who prioritizes my health and invests in my fitness? Yeah. That's a much better thing to do.
And not being so streak-based or just about, like, it has to be this thing every single day. And I think the flip side to what we were talking about before about hypercommunication is that the fact that there are so many things out there about any different topic is a great time to be alive in. Like, you can find a podcast on almost any niche topic. I mean, I've read some random French philosophy books and looked up, like, the dérive and psychogeography, topics that I didn't think there would be podcasts on. And I'm like, oh, wow, someone made a podcast on this. And it might have 30 listens, but I'm 31.
Exactly.
And that's kind of a fun piece of it. It's just finding something niche and figuring out what gets you excited. And sometimes it's just going to, I find for me that sometimes it's just going on what's a day read. It's going on a day read, so it's a drifting walk. Say that you're with your friends, you end up in a bookstore, and you're just drawn to a certain book, and just by its vibe or whatever, and you find some ideas in it that then you end up going in a rabbit hole and exploring. It doesn't have to be something that's prescriptive.
I agree. Yeah, just being curious.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that.
Yeah. So in closing, the thing that I usually ask us is, what does progression to analog mean to you? Or what does analog as a form of progress mean to you?
You know what I think, actually? I think having a structure and a foundation that is rooted in human connection and a strong sense of self and a strong sense of identity, and being able to explore technology and experience it. But I think having that base is important, having a foundation. I really do believe in traditionalism, but I think the brain is really bad at holding two conflicting beliefs at once. But that's the case most of the time. I don't think things are ever as binary as I see. They're never really black and white. There is so much gray. Definitely. So I think you can be a progressive and traditional person at the same time.
Oh, definitely. And I think that that's important to learn, is that there's a lot of value in just getting back to the basics of a simple meal with conversation with friends, and not having to overcomplicate things, but also finding value in technology and what it can bring.
Agree. Totally agree.
So how can our listeners keep up with you?
You can follow my podcast, How to Stop Being a Loser. You can follow me on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Substack, Bella Dane. Yeah.
Great. Yeah. Well, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so fun.
So much fun.
Yeah, great conversation.
Thanks.